Coming to you from the left side of Colorado Springs, this is Pike's Peak Weekly with your host, Daniel Freisinger. Hello everyone, and thanks for watching the show. We've got an election coming up in November, so I thought I'd take a couple of shows and cover some of the amendments that are going to be on the ballot, as well as maybe discuss some of the people that are running for office. Again, thanks for tuning in, and I hope you enjoy the show. This week we're going to discuss Amendment 102. The official name for this is the Criteria for Release to Pretrial Services Programs. But really, to simplify it, what Amendment 102 does is it limits the use of pretrial services as opposed to commercial bail. For many years in this country, when somebody was arrested, they would go before a judge would set bail. And then if they didn't have the money to post that full amount of bail, they would go to a for-profit bail bondsman. And for a fee of 10 to 15%, they would be able to get out. They would pay that, and it's an unrefundable fee, to the bail bondsman. And then the bail bondsman would guarantee that they showed up in court, or as it's supposed to work, they would be on the hook for the full amount of the bond, which obviously 10 times the amount of what the accused paid in a fee. Well, back in the 60s, a few organizations, I think it was the Vera Institute, along with Robert Kennedy, did some studies on the bail bond situation. What they found is that this was disproportionately harmful to lower income folks. You know, it didn't really matter what the crime you did. If you had enough money, you could get out on bail, except for a few extreme circumstances. Well, what they found were there were a lot of people that were sitting in jail for actually a longer amount of time than the punishment for the crime that they were accused of, just because they couldn't afford the fees to the bail bondsman. Well, in response to this, pretrial services was born. And what pretrial services does is when somebody is arrested, pretrial services, which is a government entity, I guess within the county in most places, they would review this person's ties to the area, their criminal history, do they have a job that they need to be going to? And what they would then do is they would recommend to a judge whether or not to allow this person out on their own recognizance with terms, with conditions. And some of those conditions, they may have to go to alcohol and drug counseling. They may have to submit to drug testing or alcohol testing. They may actually be confined to their home with GPS monitoring through a bracelet. I think most of us have seen those. Or they could actually have a combination of these. Well, and again, it's the judge that makes the final determination. Well, as pretrial services has increased, as the use of it has increased over the years, it's cut into the commercial bail bond industry's profits. And in response to that, they have really come out swinging all across the nation, fighting pretrial services or trying to tie its hands through limiting funding. And they've capitalized this year. They're capitalizing on the anti-tax, anti-spending sentiment in the country and trying to convince us in Colorado to limit the use of pretrial services. Now, the thing that I really want you to pay attention to here is that this is an out-of-state entity coming to Colorado. The guy that sponsored this has been here less than 6 months, and they're coming here and trying to change our Constitution to protect their profits. So I'm going to run a couple of videos here and show you, I want to introduce you to some of the people that are involved. The organization behind submitting this amendment, as far as we're supposed to know here in the state of Colorado, is an organization called Safe Streets Colorado. Here's just a clip from their website. You can actually go to their website and check it out if you want to have some more information. I stopped by the address listed on the paperwork for Amendment 102 for Safe Streets, Colorado, and evidently they don't plan to be around town long enough to set up a storefront. They're using a P.O. box out of the UPS store on North Powers. We'll go on here next and look and see who exactly from Safe Streets, Colorado sponsored this initiative. On the Secretary of State's website, they have who each of the initiative sponsors is for each of the amendments. And here, as you can see, we have Mike Donovan and Matthew Duran. So we'll touch on these folks a little bit more here in just a moment.
Another proposition we have is Proposition 102. And I've got Mike Paul Donovan from Safe Streets, Colorado, here to tell you a little bit more about that one.
Thank you. Well, good afternoon, fellow patriots. Sometimes our greatest threat is not the one that stands in front of us. Sometimes, instead, it's the enemy that's in our midst. It's the enemy that's behind us. It's often the goal of the enemy we see to distract us.
So you get the point. We have Safe Streets, Colorado being spearheaded by Mike Donovan, trying to protect us from these evil criminals that are going to be roaming the streets. If you'd have watched that whole video, he goes on to talk about these heinous criminals that are being released, even though judges still have the final say on who's on the streets. As a bail bondsman, the worse the criminal, the better the customer. You see a screenshot of Mike Donovan, and above him is Cheryl Burns, his boss at Bail USA out of Pennsylvania. But Mike, before he came out here to Colorado, was working with Virginians for the Preservation of Bail, and this is a shot from a dinner that they held. The caption below his picture says, Mike Donovan, the main force and organizer behind the movement, and an extremely well-spoken voice on our behalf. Many good points relating to our fight to maintain commercial bail in Virginia. And the overriding picture here in this whole section is the fact that Mike Donovan's job is to push for the preservation of commercial bail. He is an employee of Bail USA looking to make sure that their business model is preserved.
Good evening, and welcome to another edition of Coffee with Cheryl, live from Denver, Colorado. I have a very special guest with me this evening, Dusty Millette from All Pro Bail Bonds.
Correct.
Welcome, Dusty.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. For the last 5 months, bail agents across the United States have been watching what has been happening in the state of Colorado. Tell me what's going on.
Well, 5 months ago, there was a couple guys that came into town. We didn't know if they were for real. One of them being Michael Donovan, the other one being Richard Moore from Americans for Preservation of Bail, and put meetings across the state here trying to decide whether or not we should put this together with the bail agents. And lo and behold, I would think I was the very first believer in them, and I jumped on board. So we started rolling into this initiative.
What was the initiative?
Well, it's Initiative 92, essentially stating that the only people that can be released to a personal signature recognizance bond or a pretrial release are nonviolent first-time misdemeanor.
All right, so the first step was getting the proper verbiage. And who worked on that? Did you have an attorney do that? How did that all come together?
Actually, we had a group of bail agents, if you believe it, that got together in one room without really any harm to each other, if you can believe that one. I mean, and also lawyers, and you know, we put it together, and it came out very well.
You know, Dusty, you made a comment that I have to make a statement about. Bail agents in the state of Colorado historically could not get along. When we talked about where we should go after Virginia, because as you know, the Virginians for the Preservation of Bail did some work in Virginia and got some good results. They asked, where is the next state that needs help? And a lot of people and a lot of bail agents in Colorado contacted both Richard Moore and Mike Donovan and said, please come and help us. but everybody was skeptical because bail agents didn't get along here. How did you get them to work together?
Well, a common goal here, I mean, of course, with the bail industry, and most people in bail know that the industry's been faltering a little bit because of some of the things and some of the issues going on in the industry. So I think it was a common goal to try to save our industry.
As president of Bail USA, I am very proud of the bail agents in Colorado. I am very proud of Bail USA's Government Affairs Department. Together they have done a wonderful job in helping to empower the bail agents of Colorado.
It's an exciting time for bail agents across the country. It's an incredibly exciting time for bail agents in Colorado. From a few months back, when I moved to Colorado and began to understand the issues that affected bail agents in this beautiful state, I immediately began talking to regular Colorado citizens who weren't so much focused on the bail industry, but who were concerned about their tax dollars being used to spread criminal welfare programs across the state.
Well, there you have it, folks. We have a special interest that has rolled into town and decided that they would change our Constitution to protect the bail industry. So we have a real small special interest looking to change the state's constitution to protect their business model. Now, I didn't have a chance to show it, but Cheryl Burns actually has a message on her website, and I want to take a quote from this because this just illustrates the gall that this company has, thinking they can come in here and mess with our laws. She says, "One of the greatest lessons learned in Colorado is the issue we are fighting is not pretrial. It is public safety. What taxpayer or legislator can argue with that logic?" So she is getting so bold that she gives interviews on the internet talking specifically about what they're doing here. And then she goes on to brag about the fact that they've manipulated the Colorado voters. We can't allow this to go on. Now, before I go any further, I want to mention that last video that I showed, I did have to edit that down for time. So anytime you see it go black and then come back up, I cut out part of that video. You can see that full video at bailusa.net. That is their video. I just took bits and pieces of it to show you what's going on. I would encourage you to go and look at some of the stuff that they have. They're very explicit about the fact that they're doing this for the bail agents. This doesn't have anything to do with public safety here in Colorado. Now, I don't doubt maybe somewhere in their mind they've convinced themselves that they're trying to keep us safe. But the bottom line is they're trying to keep their wallet safe. So, as I wrap up here, remember, a vote yes for 102 is a vote yes for Bail USA and the bail bondsman's pockets here in the state. The bottom line is this is a bad amendment, and I would encourage you to vote no against 102. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.